Hello, I'm Rosemarie Rung, and welcome to Discover Merrimack. This is a show about the hidden and not so hidden gems of Merrimack, and I really scored getting this guest on today. She is a master chef and an expert in gluten-free cooking, Oonagh Williams.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure having you, Oonagh. I've admired you for so many years. And I've always wondered, when did you get the passion for cooking? Like, when did that start?
Well, I grew up with parents that, like most of our parents, cooked from scratch, even my father. Growing up in London, we were surrounded by all international foods. So, you know, all this nonsense about England can't cook, yes, we can, you know. And we had our own catering business as well. So I did culinary arts at college. And trained in London and Switzerland, so solid food background, and London is one of the best places for a food background anyway. And then I was doing international cooking classes over here, public and private, and catering and everything. And then my, as I call it, my 6'4" baby was diagnosed with celiac disease, and like a good mother, basically the house went gluten-free because I can cook. And then I decided, okay, let's get me tested and try. But by that stage, I'd been gluten-free. And what I didn't realize, when you have the first blood test done for celiac disease, it doesn't show anything if you've been gluten-free. It only shows in your blood if you've been eating gluten all this time. Now, gluten, if people don't realize, it's wheat, barley, and rye. It used to be oats, but now you can get gluten-free oats certified. But you think of it, wheat is now in absolutely everything. Not just in your pastries, it's in your toothpaste, it's in your shampoo, it's in jams. All the places should not have wheat. America puts wheat in because it's a cheap filler. And barley is the sweetener used in everything as well. Rye is basically on the side because rye is not a big bread that people buy or bake. So it's wheat and barley are the main things. So I'd gone totally gluten-free. So my blood test came back negative. But also you can get false negatives. So where do you stand with that nonsense? And then I was talking at a conference in Fargo, North Dakota, and I admitted to stealing a French fry from a girlfriend's plate or a teaspoon of dessert, and they kept saying, but if you're celiac disease, you're harming yourself. Yes, I know that, but the test said I was negative. And we went round in circles. And then next month was my physical. Thankfully, my doctor listens and put me in for the genetic gene test, DNA test. Well, 40% of the country have that gene in their body, which I had, but it doesn't mean to say you're going to get celiac disease. And then I was told by people, don't think of doing what's called a gluten challenge. You're far too sensitive. Now, a gluten challenge is when you've given up eating gluten so you can go gluten-free, but they want you to eat the equivalent of like 2 slices of bread for up to 6 weeks to damage your insides so they can do an endoscopy to see you've damaged your insides. But you can be in absolute hell. You know, some people, just a slight touch of a few grains of cross-contamination, they're in the bathroom D&V for weeks, some of them, and the damage you're doing. You know, one doctor says one bout of cross-contamination takes a day off your life.
So when your son became ill, or you noticed something, how old was he?
He was at university. He was already at university. And you tried doing something when he's at Syracuse University, distance-wise. And until his friend said, you know, I've got the same symptoms, get checked out. So he did. So then I went gluten-free like a good mother. Then the celiac disease from the gene test, and so I've been gluten-free ever since. And gluten-free is not this allergy and fad diet that people say. It's an autoimmune disease which can't be cured. It's in your body, you can handle it, but it's not going away. You know, it's not like give me an injection of something or a tablet. So of course Big Pharma's not interested because they can't get away with giving you medicine. And the easiest way is just to go back to the old-fashioned real food. Plain meat, fruit, veg. So, you know.
So when you switched your cooking to gluten-free, what were some of the obstacles you faced?
Well, for me, it's awful saying it, very few, because with a culinary arts degree, I knew food before celiac disease. So for me, it's, and you'll see it on the celiac supports group where people are saying, what am I going to do without my Starbucks and McDonald's and the blue packet of mac and cheese? Eat real food. You know, meat, fruit, vegetable, salad, they're basically naturally gluten-free, I say, until the manufacturers mess around with it. And it's only baking you really have to change. And people say my gluten-free baking is as good, if not better, than regular wheat from the store. Because again, I knew food before I was diagnosed. So I can take my recipe and make it gluten-free. And as you say, you've tried recipes on Pinterest and they've been appalling. Because people don't test them, they don't know how to write a recipe. And I've said that for years. You've seen recipes on the television, magazines, it sounded good, you've tried it, you've blamed yourself. No, most of the time it's their fault.
Now, I've seen, I love to follow you on Facebook. I love to see what recipes and what dishes you're creating. But you do use like pasta and things. How do you, what is a substitute? How do you do that?
You find a gluten-free pasta that you like. There's quite a few brands out there. Everyone has their own preference for what they are. I tend to use Barilla because it's the most easily available. But again, I only like Barilla spaghetti. I don't like most of the gluten-free ziti rotini because the texture's so different. But then I didn't like Barilla wheat pasta. You know, when they did the whole wheat and rotini. No, I'd have it as spaghetti, but not as the rotini. So much of it is your taste, what you do and don't like. And, you know, as you say, you've seen so much I've posted, and I'll write in naturally gluten-free so often. But it's simple, like soy sauce. Soy sauce is fermented with wheat, so it's not safe. But you can fairly easily buy tamari, which is soy sauce without the wheat, and taste the same. You know, instead of thickening, I'll use cornstarch, but you buy a brand of cornstarch that says labeled gluten-free because corn is easily cross-contaminated. So it's all this stuff, but, you know, I've had real food.
Well, I like the fact that when you're posting your recipes, you mention where you get them at.
Yes.
Because I'm like a huge market basket
absolutely.
person.
Yes.
And then you mention Aldi, so it really helps save people time.
People love that when I do public classes, that actually in the written recipe I'll say I buy such and such brand, and you know, this week, whatever the date is, it costs this much money, so people know, and they love that. And when I do a public class, I could spend more time, like you and I just said, about chatting with chicks. I could spend more time just answering food questions than actually doing a demo, because I know food. You know, unfortunately, with all the conferences I've spoken at, when there's a medical component in the sponsors, oh, she's only food, she doesn't know medical. Well, unfortunately, too many medical people, as we know, regardless of gluten-free and celiac, they know very little. They have their pet theories, and that's it, you know. And celiac disease is not an allergy. We call it an allergy to make it simpler for people to understand, because it's actually an autoimmune disorder that's in your body. And the PFAS in town affects people with autoimmune disorders more.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, so I think, oh, thanks very much.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. I mean, there's already evidence that PFAS in blood inhibits the action of vaccines. And, you know, it does have an autoimmune component to it. So that's true.
And I was always a water drinker. So now I order in water from Monadnock and pay for it. I'm not one of the ones that gets free water. But yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trusting my health any longer.
So what are some of the... you were talking how it's an autoimmune disease, and that's new, because I always kind of thought it was an allergy. So
exactly.
So what does it do to the body when with people that have that gene? What does it actually do?
It's totally in every single person is an individual. I normally liken some of it to flu going through the family. One person sails through, one person is really sick with it, and the others are in the middle. And that's the same with celiac disease. My reaction was never stomach. Never ever stomach. My son's is heavy stomach reaction. Mine is arthritis, joint pains, which as we get older, and as a chef using your hands all the time, it hurts. And it's also very much brain fog and migraines, totally female, and also female periods and infertility. Lots of them are infertility. My OBGYN was fascinated to hear all this when I was telling her, because you go to a doctor, and too often with females they say it's in your mind, which we know it isn't. And they say, oh, this only affects women. No, women pester more. Men don't, unless we pester on their behalf.
That's true,
you know,
that's true.
Which is true. And too many doctors have their own pet theories. celiac disease was first recognized at the end of the Second World War, when a doctor in Holland realized that his patients that he kept seeing before the war were better at the end of the war because they didn't have access to beer and bread in Holland. And believe me, I lived in Holland. They like their beer and their bread. And he then came up with this, there's something causing it. And celiac disease was always called failure to thrive and a wasting disease. So you'd see these little kids with pot bellies like you see the starving in Africa. So when you see an adult that's not skinny, they say, it can't possibly be gluten-free or celiac disease. But down in Boston, Harvard Medical School at a conference said, at medical school, they're taught 1 hour of nutrition. Celiac disease is so rare, you'll never see it in your lifetime. Now you see the numbers of genuine celiac disease rising, because America, in my opinion, puts so much wheat and other junk in all the food. It's going to affect somebody somewhere all the time.
I also heard that the way wheat is grown through industrial agriculture is they've actually genetically modified it to have more gluten in it.
Yeah. I mean, people say if you have the ancient wheat, you can tolerate it. Well, no, you can't, but you probably don't get as many nasty reactions. I mean, as I said, mine is arthritis and was OBGYN and migraines. My son, I think his asthma at the age of 2 was probably the celiac disease. There's 300, I call it disorders. You hate saying diseases. 300 disorders that can be gluten-free, can be celiac disease. And most doctors, even GI doctors and celiac experts, really don't understand this. They look at the stomach as the only thing. And I normally say to people, if this starts making you think, and normally does, talking to other females, I wonder if this could be what's happening with me. In the summer, I say, try going gluten-free. The plain meat, plain veg in the summer. Just you've got to be careful cooking on the grill, because all that, the bread and everything you've cooked on it before will get into whatever you're cooking with cross-contamination. So cook on foil and see if you get almost, within 1 week. But you've got to be truly strict. There's no such thing as a little bit. You've got to be 100%, can be a pain.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. There's a friend of mine in Moultonborough who is gluten-free, and she was having arthritis. Those were her initial symptoms, but she said she cannot tolerate, even if it was like a drop of soy sauce, it doesn't take much to trigger a reaction.
And the longer you've stayed gluten-free, the more you're going to react to other things. I mean, so many of us as we age get a problem with dairy. Now there's a difference between dairy-free and lactose-free. Dairy means you can't take in any produce or product from cows, milk, sheep or goats. Lactose-free means it's just the lactate component, so you can take the tablet. And most of us say, we're not giving up cheese. That was tough enough going gluten-free and giving up wheat. We're not giving up our cheese and the rest. So I have lactate milk. I'll take a tablet before butter and cream, otherwise I get stomachache. So I juggle it that way. But the longer you've gone gluten-free and dairy-free or lactose-free, other symptoms come in with other people. We get more and more susceptible and sensitive to the other junk in the food. You've only got to look at the difference. America has 8 allergens they recognize. They do not recognize gluten. Thank you, FDA, who listen to corporate America. They only listen to wheat. And that's because barley is such a big sugar that the Sugar Corporation probably wouldn't let the FDA include it. You go to Europe. Europe has, for England, 14 allergens as well, and very much stricter. They don't let corporations get away with their lies. Now,
are there standards? So if something says gluten-free, like I bought some cookies today, and they were gluten-friendly. And I asked, are these gluten-free? And she says, we haven't used any ingredients that include gluten, but the kitchen, there may be cross-contamination. So are there standards?
Well, I've posted forever, why are you calling it gluten-friendly? That means I love gluten, give me more of it. At least say gluten-sensitive or gluten-aware. That to me means more, but most of these people, it's the lawyers doing CYA for a start. But it used to be that apart from celiac disease, they say gluten-sensitive, gluten-intolerant, gluten allergy. Then a few years ago, they made it non-celiac gluten sensitivity. NCGS is what you'll see written. And it used to be years ago, we'd want something made in a dedicated premises, You know, so we're talking manufacturers, not restaurants at the moment. So you'd know that it should be totally, totally safe. Then they would say dedicated lines. So only gluten-free was made on these lines in the factory. Then after that, the least one was shared lines, which would mean, you know, the gluten-free was made on the same lines that you made wheat stuff on. Well, now I'm reading since COVID, oh, we're not doing that any longer, and we're just going to say may contain wheat, and it may this and may that, because they can get away with it with the FDA. I'm sorry. Back in 2015, the FDA was meant to do gluten-free labeling, and that's where we got only wheat, not gluten. The rest of the world says gluten. So you tell me what's going on. I normally say the FDA cares more about corporate wealth than human health, and it's for everything.
Yeah, and
my soapbox.
no, no, it's fascinating, and I find I do a lot of home cooking, mainly because it's less expensive,
and you know what you're getting,
and I know what I'm getting, and it's like what you said, eat real food, and I find I don't have to really read labels much because I'm not buying things that have an ingredient list. The ingredient is what the food is,
and you look at ingredient lists. I used to say years ago on Cook's Corner, if you read an ingredient list and there's words on it, apart from vitamins, words that you don't understand and don't recognize, you shouldn't be putting them in your body. You know, you look at all these commercials for all these irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, all the different ones, Crohn's and everything, and they're pushing drugs like mad. How many of these people have tried watching their diet? You know, all these people with diabetes, oh, what am I going to do for a Twinkie and a Little Debbie? Be healthier?
Yeah. Well, someone told me once, don't buy food that doesn't rot.
Yes.
And it's so true, because there's some food that just, like a Twinkie, does not rot. You can keep
Jamie Oliver, the British chef, said, don't worry about if your food goes moldy. Worry about if it doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good...
You know.
Yeah.
And don't you remember, again, prior to COVID, you could buy pork tenderloin marinated in vacuum packed with like a 6 weeks life on it?
Yeah.
Why would you ever buy anything like that? And yes, it's difficult doing homemade food.
Right.
It takes time, but you can do it. Get the kids involved. I'm so thankful Charles, our son, grew up learning how to cook, because with celiac disease, he knows how to take care of himself. He was always the one at university doing all the parties and thereafter, because he can cook. They were very happy.
Well,
very happy.
I have a friend whose son is a cook, and when he was in college, that was a great way for him to
Getting
meet.
the girls.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we know that one.
Well, let's talk about something really fun.
Yeah.
Like, what are your favorite recipes?
Well, it's got to be desserts, hasn't it? It's awful.
Desserts, but you know, you make great salads too. I mean, just the combinations. Like, how do you come up with this stuff?
Well, it's like you said, you look at recipes out there and you just take their flavor combinations for a start, and you don't trust their ingredients. You just do your own thing. So, I have the favorite lettuce I buy, Olivia, little leaf that's a New Hampshire.
Oh, yes.
The crispy baby. I love the big Campari or the little grapes. Then you've got the cucumbers. I normally get sweet grapes, so you throw those in. Love fresh mango, but it goes off far too often. So Market Basket with Dole has little 8-ounce cups of chopped mango in syrup. They have all the other fruit, but who cares? It's the mango you want. You chop your apple up as well. The basic salad dressing I always do is a maple herb, which is olive oil, some vinegar, salt, pepper, some maple syrup, and just lots of fresh herbs, and you zap it with the immersion blender. Lasts in the fridge, and it's wonderful. Last night was a honey mustard sauce, like 50-50 of light Hellmann's, light sour cream, salt, pepper, garlic powder again, and just honey and Dijon mustard, and again some fresh herbs. You taste the difference. I buy a bottle of dressing, apart from Ranch. You know, Ranch gets a buy or whatever it's called, because it is labelled gluten-free anyway. You taste the difference between that and the commercial ones. And I'll say in recipes, no, I haven't tried this with dried herbs. I don't do dried herbs. I do the fresh ones. I have them growing. Yeah, you really, and you're getting the vitamin C as well from the herbs. And dried herbs, I say, have been pulverized to extinction.
Yeah. Oh, I grow, and that's what I love about the summer. I've got Thai basil, basil, parsley, dill, chives, rosemary, lavender, even lavender tea.
Yes, so and lavender is a stuffing into the baby Cornish hens. And you're saying chives. I will buy green onion in the store, And then if you keep that much of the white stalk of the green onion and just have a pot with soil and put it in, it regrows.
Oh, I'll have to try that.
Oh yeah, I have the huge thing of it.
But there's nothing better than going out in the garden, pulling a tomato and some basil.
You see, I don't because of the PFAS.
Yeah.
Because if it's in the water, it's falling in the soil. So the only thing I do is those few herbs in the summer because I can't do without it.
Yeah.
But in the winter, I have the indoor growing system. But yeah, I mean, fresh salads are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you just have a plain piece of meat with it. And thankfully, my husband and son love their vegetables, so that's fine. But also desserts. As I said, I was going to bring you in an almond cake. But, with this heat, it wouldn't even make it here with cream or chocolate. It's pointless.
No, my waist thanks you.
Yes, yeah. But, it's genetic. Being British, you're going to have dessert with your afternoon tea, which is made in a teapot, not a bag in a mug. It's real stuff.
Well, Oonagh, you have been so generous sharing your expertise for years and years. And in fact, I saw this coming in. I don't know if this is going to capture, but you got first place award.
Well, Merrimack did.
Yeah, Merrimack did.
Yes,
but it was for
me.
your Cooking with Oonagh.
Yeah, which has been on Merrimack television for years.
And you've also been on WMUR.
WMUR for many, many, many years. Even during COVID with a few other chefs, we all taped from home. And they posted that. Now they got rid of the kitchen anyway, so we can't go back in. The talks at libraries and conferences are slowly opening up now. So, if libraries and garden clubs want me to come in and give a talk and a demo. So I said I talk on It's Not Rocket Science, Just Eat Real Food, or Power of Food, Best Medicine, Worst Poison, and talk about GMOs and organics and trans fat because I live it on a daily basis knowing food. I've done so much with food.
Yeah,
and I know too much, and I talk too much. I know all of that.
Does your husband cook? Because I know he's taped your shows before.
Oh, no, he doesn't cook.
Well, why would he cook if
he
he's
knows
got you?
an awful lot from listening to me, so he's really good that way. But why would he cook? He'd be a fool.
Have you spoken at medical schools?
Oh, I'm not medical, you see.
But see, they should still have you come in.
Foolish, absolutely foolish. I know had people saying, oh, you need to be talking to so-and-so at this hospital in this place, and you contact them. Oh, no, you're not medical.
Oh.
And unfortunately, too many medical people, even the GI people and celiac doctors, make too many mistakes. You've only got to read on the celiac support group the level of ignorance in far too many doctors. I mean, one celiac nutritionist I know that is in a celiac department, she thought it was okay for a vinegar diluted or not diluted, distilled from grain alcohol was okay to call apple vinegar or wine vinegar. The fact that it wasn't made from apple cider or made from wine didn't bother her. It was labelled gluten-free. Now in Europe, that would be against the Trade Descriptions Act and you'd be hit with an almighty fine. So I say, look at your vinegar. Does it say made from wine, grapes, apple or cider? If it doesn't, why are you using it? Something that simple. That shows the difference in mindset of, oh, it says gluten-free, so it's fine. No, it's junk.
Yeah. Well, educating people what you've done, Oonagh, is so important because it empowers them.
Yes.
And they don't have to rely on other people to make decisions for them. They have enough knowledge, they can go ahead and be confident in the kitchen and control it.
It's ordinary food. It's just showing people how to cook it. And yes, I used to do all the cooking classes and dinner parties. COVID still hasn't opened up, but I still do so much stuff because I know food. And I'm nice to talk to.
Yeah, you are. You're great. You're like a great guest. So we could go on for a long time, but we have to stop. I know, but thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And they can
find me on regular Facebook at Oonagh Williams. With COVID, I haven't really pushed my gluten-free cooking with Oonagh on Facebook or on my website because everyone just goes to ordinary Facebook, Oonagh Williams. Okay, Oonagh Williams. So Merrimack, go to Facebook and follow Oonagh Williams and you will not regret it. You are going to find a wealth of great recipes. She'll show you, even on the video, she'll show you how to do it. Oonagh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.